Good morning, afternoon or evening, wherever you are. I'm Paul Clark and welcome to my studio. Now, what I've got for you lovely lot today. Well, as promised, I've got a scene from our recent painting holiday cruising on the beautiful River Rhine. So, we're going to be having a go at painting this lovely little German town. So, come and join me and we'll paint this step by step together. So just before we start, I've got a very short video of our trip. But if you're not interested and you want to go straight to the tutorial, then just jump forward about 4 minutes. Catch you later. So our trip down the River Rhine was organised by those lovely people at Harmony Voyages. And our home for the week was the stunning Amadeus Queen, which is basically a luxury hotel on water. So a good part of the journey is spent cruising along the Rhine, starting in Basel, Switzerland, and sailing through France, Germany, and finally into Holland. Now, around every bend is a picturesque village or a medieval castle, with plenty of inspiration for great paintings. Plenty of things to do on board with daily classes and a chance to meet up with some new friends. Now there are plenty of excursions, including the stop at the pretty French city of Strasbourg with its many medieval streets. Cathedral. Imagine carving out all that lot. And just by chance they happened to have a choir practice while we were there. Now there are a huge choice of excursions you can take, but as we were taking daily lessons, we tended to take the ones we could walk to from the ship, including this lovely German town with its winding alleyways and a cable car with spectacular views of the Rhine. And then for our final destination, we arrived in bustling Amsterdam. Never seen so many bikes. And of course, any visit here should include the Van Gogh Museum. Yeah, not bad for a beginner. And not forgetting each night top quality entertainment with music legends Richard Thompson, Show of Hands and Broom Besoms. Now I can honestly say that even though this was a working holiday, it's one of the best trips that I've ever been on. Here is the photo reference for today's tutorial, which I took at the village, which I'm not going to try and pronounce. Okay, so for today's materials, my paper is some Arches 300 pound, 100% cotton, and on a block so it won't need stretching, but any decent watercolour paper will do. My colours today, now there are quite a few of them, so I'll list them below the video as I use them. And my brushes from my range, a 3/4 inch flat, number 12 and number 6 round, and of course my trusty number 3 rigger. Now some of you have asked me when are they going to be back in stock. Well, I can say now, so link below in the description. Here's the pencil sketch, which is free to download from my website, link in the description below. Off we go! Using my flat brush, wetting the sky first to make sure I don't get any unnatural brush strokes in the sky. And a nice simple wash of cobalt blue. Now what I'm doing here with the road is getting down a very wet base layer using several colours to neutralise the white paper. Now you don't need to use exactly the same colours that I'm using here, but keep them very muted and soft, letting the colours mix and blend on your paper rather than in the palette. Next, I'm using my number 12 and painting in the buildings with some watery yellow ochre, and you could add in a little touch of lemon yellow if you want to brighten it a little. Now I want to get the flowers in early, geraniums possibly, as I want to guarantee they go down on white paper to get them as bright as possible. Now any bright red or pink will work, and you can switch to a smaller brush if necessary, but I'm keeping with my number 12. Next for the foliage, and I'm using my normal mix of cadmium yellow and cobalt blue, making sure I paint around all the flowers. Now if some of the flowers are still wet and bleed into the green wash, that's fine, it all adds to the effect. And for these darker greens I add in a little more blue into the mix and drop in wet in wet. Here I'm using the dry brush technique, keeping it flat to the surface and lightly dabbing with a brush to create this broken effect from the texture of the paper. a little bit of splatting for extra texture. Now for these leaves, and they look a little bit like some sort of vine to me. Anyway, I'm using the point of my brush and a short dab-like one stroke to get the effect. And then using my number 3 rigger for these spindly stems. Back to the buildings and some very watery Payne's grey for the roof. And here I'm adding in a little touch of burnt umber just to warm up this mix a bit. So I want a warm shadow colour here on the buildings, so I'm using some watery burnt umber. Okay, so now honing in on some details, and now using my smaller number 6 brush and some Payne's grey, trying to paint these windows as quickly as possible. One simple stroke without being tempted to square up everything. Okay, next for that lovely dark shadow across the road, and I'm going to exaggerate the colour and add some extra interest and make it a nice purpley colour. Then adding in some Payne's grey into the wet to darken the value. And over this foliage here, a darker green to continue the shadow upwards. So now we need to let this totally dry. So it's a perfect time for a short break. And what about a tankard of German Pilsner? Prost! Next, for these windows and all the relevant woodwork, I'm using a mixture of alizarin crimson and burnt sienna. Now for the shadow sides, and I'm using some burnt umber. Now it's important to remember not to labour too long over your brush strokes. Keep them flowing, keep them simple. Now for the suggestion of a couple of seated people here, and you can paint these any colours you like. Just adding on here a little bit of foliage details with a darker green, but don't overwork, as you want as much of that original wet in wet wash to show through. So these panels are actually blackboards for the owner to write the daily menus on. So they need to be dark enough for the white lettering to show. And of course, when you get a bright sunny day like this, your shadow areas are going to be very dark. So I'm using a very strong mix of Payne's grey here. And now just adding in those final details that really bring the whole painting together. Now with my rigger again, and I think these are cables for holding some decorative lights. Right, now for some final touches with some gooey white gouache. And of course we need a pole here to connect those cables to. So now I'm switching over to a white pastel pencil, as I find these are not so white as painting with gouache, and you can also smudge and blend them with your finger. Okay, so now for the menu on the boards. And I think it's important you don't actually try and write anything in particular, or your eye will focus straight away on it. Just simple squiggles. Today's special Sauerbraten 20 Euros. So I think it says terrace up here, but again, I'm happy if you can't read it. There we go, all done in about 3 hours. Well, I hope you enjoyed that as much as I did, and you'll give it a go. It's great fun. And if you're interested in any of our cruises or holidays, workshops and events, please have a look at our dedicated website, link in the description below. And it's changing all the time and we're adding on new events. So please don't forget to like, subscribe if you haven't already, it is free. Leave a comment, I do read every single one. And I look forward to seeing you all again next week for another Watercolour Wednesday. Prost!